and today we have a testimony from Faith Lutz, and we're continuing on part 4 of our series, Hello, My Name Is, with Alex and Taylor. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social medias, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and subscribe to our YouTube. I hope you guys enjoy this week of Revolution.
I've always knew God, and I've always heard people talk to him, and my family would always pray with me when we were together, but I didn't really have a bond where I'd go off and I'd start praying at night alone. And he was always a part of me, I guess. I always knew him. I was baptized here, so I always came here, and I'd go to church on Sundays with my family, but it wasn't to a certain extent where I would I'd read the Bible on my own, and I wasn't that engaged with him, only when I had to be. There was never a really big point in my life where I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, God, you're my best friend. But it was kind of baby steps that I would do. My mom would always pray with me in the car when an accident happened, but suddenly over time I'd just start reaching for my mom's hand and pray on my own, and I'd say the prayer, and then I'd start reading the Bible on my own and doing my own devotions. So it wasn't an automatic switch, but it happened over time. Now I can just look up to God. If I'm in the middle of the grocery store and I'm scared, I'll just look up and I'll start talking, or I'll pray. And at night, even if my mom's asleep, I'll pray before bed, and every time when I wake up in the morning. So I feel more secure, and I know that he's always with me. Even though I can't just look over and start talking in a conversation and have tea with him, I still know that he cares for me and he loves me. And yeah.
Well, hey everyone, Taylor here, and this is our last night of this series, Hello, My Name Is, and I'm so happy tonight that we have the incredible Alex with us. Alex, how are you doing?
Great, how are you?
Great, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we've been asking everyone the same question to kick things off.
Okay.
Because, we're gonna talk about your story, we're gonna get deep in a second, but we want to start off with a little fun.
Okay.
So, if there was a movie made about your life, who would be the leading actress cast to play you?
Cast me. Okay, so I thought really hard about this.
Okay.
And I'm going to go with Christina Applegate.
It's a good choice.
Yes.
That's a good choice.
Yeah, I thought so.
I think that's pretty even. Now you're a fan of another actress.
Yes.
Now I wouldn't say you would cast this person to play you, but
she would be my mom.
She would be, okay.
Yeah.
Alex and I have a debate. Maybe y'all can sell this in the comments. Is Meryl Streep the GOAT or overrated? I lean on the side of overrated.
Nope, the best.
Alex thinks Meryl Streep is the GOAT, and we go back and forth about this a lot. We'll let the kids decide.
Okay.
Vote
for Meryl.
Vote for Meryl. Meryl 2020.
Yes.
We won't go there. Never mind.
Skip.
Yeah, we'll get in trouble for that. But so as we've been doing the past few weeks, we've been inviting staff and leaders from Grace Church to share their story, because one thing that we believe, one thing we talk a lot about in youth ministry, and our church believes overall, is that everybody has a story, and that when we share those stories, they can encourage each other, we can encourage one another with our story, and that also our stories have the power to point people towards Jesus. But that's just one thing that we really believe. So we've been inviting you all to share your stories, but we wanted to take time to hear this lived out. So let's just dive right in.
Okay.
Alex, you could just share your story with us, starting maybe through childhood and your teenage years especially, and then sort of how that's influenced you through adulthood.
Okay. So I think It's best to start with I grew up in New Jersey, and it was me. I have an older brother who's about 15 years older than me, so there's that big age gap, and then my younger brother Julian, who's only 4 years younger than me. So we grew up in New Jersey. My parents got divorced when I was about 4. So we had pretty equal time between my mom and my dad. My mom and my dad, however, were very, very into their careers. So I spent a lot of time at daycare, early in the morning, after school, later into the evening. So a lot of my childhood, I remember, was being at daycare, me and Julian, until pretty late. Just because my parents were both very, very into their careers. I wasn't really raised in a specific religion. My mom was Catholic, but that was mostly Christmas and Easter. We would go to church. My dad is Jewish. So when we were younger and my parents were still married, they followed some of the Jewish traditions. But then when they got divorced, it sort of just went to, you know, if I was with my dad for Hanukkah, we celebrated Hanukkah. Or if I was with my mom for Christmas, we celebrated Christmas. So there was never really any like religious foundation in either of the households. So my parents had gotten married a few times in my childhood. So I always had a stepmom or a stepdad, which was also pretty difficult when my parents are so busy and then they're introducing this new, you know, parent figure into our life. And so when I was in 6th grade, we moved to Florida. My mom was engaged to a man named Eddie. So me, my mom, Eddie, and Julian, we loaded up and we moved all the way to Florida, and it was extremely hard on me. I'm a daddy's girl through and through. I still am. And then we left. You know, my older brother was in college by then, so he wasn't moving with us. And my mom's mom, my grandma, who we were with her a lot. If we weren't at daycare, we were with my grandma. So we moved to Florida, and middle school's tough as it is. And so here we are in a brand new state. Kids made fun of me at the beginning because I talk different. I had a very strong accent, a lot, you know, stronger than what I do now.
Can you give us a couple of examples
Everyone makes
of this?
fun of me when I talk about how I drink water, or I say coffee, or, you know, but when you grow up there, like, that's just how you talk, so you don't think anything different. But then here I come to Florida, and people are like, I don't understand what you're saying. And
you want what to drink?
yeah. So, you know, it was just hard, and meeting new friends, and like I had shared before, my mom worked a lot. So when we were in New Jersey, my dad was able to take me to and from extracurricular activities. I played soccer, I cheered. But when we moved to Florida, my mom just never had the time to really get me involved because she couldn't take me anywhere. So I started to get in a little bit of trouble, you know, just I think primarily trying to get my mom's attention. When we would get home from school, it was Eddie that was in charge, and Eddie and I did not get along, like, at all. He had older kids, so he was done with being like the father figure. Julian and I were 11 and 7, and his kids were like in their late 20s. So he had done that whole parenting thing already. And so Eddie and I would get in these fights during the day, and then my mom would come home from work at like 7:30, 8 o'clock, and it was just, oh, you wouldn't believe what Alex did. And I never got to like say my side of the story or say my piece before my mom came in and started. So I started acting out because I just was not happy. I missed my dad. I didn't really feel like I had friends, and the friends I did have, my mom, again, because she worked, I could never hang out with my friends outside of school unless they lived in my neighborhood. So I started to just feel really, really alone. And I would call my dad every day crying, and I just wanted to come home, and I didn't like Florida, and I was pretty miserable. So I went all 3 years. I did middle school at Gulf Middle. And then my freshman year, I went to Cape High, and things had started taking a turn for the worse. I started skipping school. I started experimenting with smoking pot, and I just started to get into, you go from like middle school trouble to high school trouble. And me and Eddie were just, our fighting it was just horrible. And so one day my mom picked me up from school early and said, I have a plane ticket for you and you're going to go live with your dad. And she had suitcases packed, and that night I took a plane back to New Jersey. And like, that's what I wanted for so long, but then like I was crushed. Because in my mind, my mom's choosing Eddie over me. So my dad enrolled me into the high school that if I would have stayed through middle school, that would have been the high school that I went to. And I just unraveled. I skipped school all the time. I was getting in trouble, started going to parties. I ended up getting expelled from school because after, a certain amount of times being suspended, you get expelled. And I was never I wasn't a bad kid. I just didn't want to go to school. I wanted to go hang out with my friends. And my dad, again, with his career, he would get home late at night, so I didn't have any supervision. So I just got to do whatever I want, and I was so angry with my mom, and I felt even more alone, even though I was with my dad, which is what I wanted. And so I just started making poor decisions, and I was hanging out with the wrong friends who had similar lives. They came from broken homes or dysfunctional families, so we all sort of had this in common, and none of us were a good example for one another. So I was drinking, smoking cigarettes, smoking pot, and then, that all leads to making poor choices with boys. And when you think about it after, it's just all ways that I was trying to get attention, or I was trying to fill some void. So my dad had gotten married within the first year of me moving home, and we made the move from New Jersey to Pennsylvania, which in hindsight was actually the best thing for me. They decided that I was going to repeat my freshman year, and so I had a fresh start. I'm at a new school. My dad's in a healthy relationship. I got involved with school. I was class secretary. I was on the cheerleading squad, so things were definitely looking up. But I still had all of these broken parts of me that even though things were going better and I was finally in a loving household with a mother figure and a father figure, I was still distraught over how me and my mom were. And I refused to talk to her. She would call, I would hang up with her. So even though I was greatly involved with school, I still made poor choices with boys. I was very strategic in the way that I was in high school. In order to go to cheerleading practice, you can't come to school later than 9, or you can't leave school before 2. You wouldn't be able to go to practice. So I would make sure that if I'm not going to go in the morning, I was very strategic. So I still was bending the rules.
At 8:59,
yes,
you were there.
I was, yes. And so things then started, me and my stepmom were not seeing eye to eye. I would, teenage girl, and here's this woman, doing her best to try to be my mom, but with all my mommy issues that I had. So after about 5 months of us just going head to head, I went to Florida to visit my mom for Christmas, and I never went back to New Jersey. And this time I moved in with my older brother and his wife. So within the time that I moved to New Jersey, they had moved to Florida. So here I was again, about to enter my senior year of high school, new home, new school, new fresh start. So they were very strict with me, which is what I needed. There was no extracurricular activities. They drove me to school. They picked me up from school. My grades they weren't the best, they could have been better. So I was really focused on my studies. And my sister-in-law, Rachel, had recently started attending Grace Church. So she invited me to come with her. And I'll never forget, this sounds horrible, but she, you have to remember, I went to Catholic churches here and there. And, it's the stand up, sit down, singing the hymns,
Yes.
wearing the Sunday best, or I would go to synagogue. So when I came to Grace Church, it was like,
Neither of those.
no, like, Mom, why are people wearing jeans? Why? Like, it was just so many things. So my mom went, Rachel went, and I looked at my mom halfway through and I said, how dare you bring me to a place like this? And I know that sounds so horrible to say, but it's the truth. Like, I had
You just weren't
never,
used to it.
no,
Yeah.
like, when I was in high school, like, no one really talked about church.
Sure.
Youth group was not a thing. My friends might have gone to Catholic school in elementary and middle school, but that was as far as
Sure.
religion was really ever talked about, unless I went to a bat mitzvah, you
Yeah.
know? So Rachel started volunteering on Sunday mornings with the kids, doing the kids ministry. I think she was doing either the 1-year-olds or 2-year-olds. So she's like, well, if you don't want to, go to the services, why don't you help me volunteer? I loved kids. I had worked with kids in the past. So her and we did, I think, the 11:30 service. We did like the 1 and 2-year-olds. So then after doing that, I started going to church with her on Sundays, probably like within a few months. And then she really wanted me to try out youth group. So I can't even remember. I was trying to think. I think it was Sojourn back then.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound
That sounds
right?
That sounds
So it was in the church building where, what do you call it
It's
now?
the cafe. Where the cafe was.
Yes. So that's where we would gather for youth group. And I don't know. It's like I went to youth group the first time and I loved it. People were so nice. I mean, I just felt welcome. Like, here I am, this girl that's bounced from house to house, new again, senior year of high school, and it's a hard time to make friends. I wasn't involved with any sports or extracurricular activities then, but everyone was just so kind and nice and friendly, and like, I think the second week I was there, I was being invited to go bowling on the weekend, and I just felt, I don't know, included. So I started going to youth group, and within 6 months of that, I then gave my life to Christ. I got my first Bible, and I joined a small group. It was a girls' small group. And then I started volunteering to be a youth leader for middle school. It just, like, in 6 months, my whole life had just transformed.
Yeah.
I was doing so well in school. My attitude had changed. My behaviors had changed. I was starting to work on my relationship with my mom. Just like all of these things started falling into place for me. I met my now husband, Randy, at youth group, and we dated for 3 years before we got engaged, and we had 2 very, very close couple friends. After making poor decisions with boys in high school, once I gave my life to Christ, I'm like, I am going to vow to not have sex until I get married. Randy and I did a lot of talking, like we were in the talking phase before we officially became boyfriend and girlfriend, and I told him how that was important to me, and that was also something that was very important to him, so we were on the same page. But then we also had these other 2 close couple friends that had the same views, so like we could support one another, and I could talk to my girlfriends about, how hard it was, and especially when we got engaged and we got closer to our wedding. And over those 3 years of me and Randy dating, we were heavily involved with middle school youth group. We had gone on some mission trips, which were incredible. That was another thing, like, unless I went to youth group and tried out youth group, I would have never experienced going to another country and seeing how God worked through me in those ways. And then when Randy and I got married, we continued to do youth group for a little bit. And then we went through a period where we went to a new church, which was kind of hard at first because we, had gone to the same church for so long, the church we were married in, and trying to, when our small group friends are talking about this series they did at church, but our series at church was different. But we eventually, it got easier, and we're still in the same marriage small group for going on, I think, 13 years now.
That's awesome.
Which is amazing. Taylor Foley's part of that small group, and the Foleys have been such a blessing to our family. So I would say, like you said, go into adulthood, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. So we got involved with Grace Youth again. Now I think I'm on my 8th year of coming back, which is crazy. And I've been doing high school youth group now, which I love. But there were a few things in my adulthood that sort of like shifted how my relationship was with God. So my mom passed away about almost 6 years ago. And luckily through the time that I moved back to Florida, the time that I became, gave my life to Christ, I really tried to work on that relationship with my mom. I remember one Sunday we were at church here, and her and I went up to the altar and prayed, and I just sort of like gave everything that I held on to, like my whole childhood, and just gave it to God. And I just sort of like, I'm going to forgive you, and I'm just going to,
Wow.
And then, so my mom passed away, and that hit me pretty hard. She battled cancer for a long time. She fought so hard. And, we always knew, like, eventually she's going to pass away. But she just went from doing okay to being gone in such a short amount of time that you can't prepare yourself for it. But, like, there was, like, zero time to prepare myself for it. And even though we had that moment at church that one Sunday, and I, like, fully thought that I had forgiven her, I still had so many regrets of all the time that I wasted in high school where I didn't talk to her, or even when I moved back that I didn't, I still didn't truly connect with her like I would say a mother-daughter would. So that really hit me hard that now she's gone and there's no way for me to repair, and there's no way for me to tell her the things I wish I would have told her. And so I did find myself in a pretty dark place after my mom passed away. And I just didn't know I had all those feelings still. So I had to really, really turn to my faith, and really I had to like dig myself out of this like hole, because at that point I was married, I had a daughter, I had a career, like there were these things in my life that were depending on me, so I had to pull myself together, and I couldn't have done that unless I turned to the Bible and I worked on my relationship with God and, my own inner demons that I had based on the relationship that I had with my mom.
Sure.
So about 2 years after my mom passed away, I got pregnant with my son Jax, and I had a pretty scary pregnancy with him. About 6 weeks in, I had to be admitted into the hospital because I had a blood clot in my lung. And the doctor said to me, if you didn't come in tonight, you probably wouldn't have woken up the next day.
Wow.
And then I just was severely ill. I have what's called hyperemesis, which just means severe sickness throughout the whole pregnancy. I was on bed rest. I had IV therapy. I had nurses come. I was in and out of the hospital. I was hospitalized about 7 times. I was on blood thinners because of my blood clot. Like, it was just a very scary pregnancy. And I, once again, just felt so alone and in this dark place because, I'm on bed rest. I can't go anywhere. I was so ill that I didn't want to see people. I lived in a bed for an extended amount of time. And, at that time, for me and 3 other of my small group girls or small group friends, we started doing the Serendipity Bible. So we would take one chapter or one book, we would take one book that we would study, and there was always like 3 like fun question openers that we would do, and then there were like 3 questions based on the chapter that we read, and then there was like 3 additional questions on how we relay that to our life. So we did that. We did our best to do it every single day, but we kept each other accountable, and we did it basically throughout my whole pregnancy. And I still will tell people, like, if it was not for that time that I set out every day to do that devotion, that, like, I don't think I could have ever, I mean, I would have gotten through my pregnancy, but I don't think I could have ever really gotten through. And I think that's when I felt the most connected with God, because I was just scared. Like, I didn't know how this pregnancy was going to end, and luckily he was fine, but it was me that there was just all of these risks, and it was a really scary time. But thankfully, with my friends and just being diligent in working on my faith and trusting in God and knowing that he had a plan for me, he had a plan for my baby. And then as a mom already of like a 2-year, or I think Peyton was 3, that, you know, like I didn't want to leave her, and there was just all these uncertainties, you know. So I just really, really dug deep and worked on my relationship with God, and I don't think I've ever been as close with him as I was during those 9 months when I was pregnant with Jax.
It's amazing to me to hear that. And this is how God works, really, of how it was in that most scary, stressful, unknown time that you felt closest to God. Because I think sometimes our misconception is that we feel closest to God when things are going great.
Yes.
Like, when life is up and to the right and things are going well. And your story is such an example of like, no, in fact, the time I felt closest to God was when I was in the pit.
Yes.
Like when I was I don't know what's going to happen next, and life is scary. I want to jump back to, there's one theme throughout your story that I kept hearing, and it's these different, almost different looks of what family is. And at times it was really good, and at times it really wasn't so good. And you had many different sort of, throughout your childhood and teenage years especially, you had many different homes that you lived in and different family dynamics and situations. And I know that there are students, a lot of students that we know, that live in those kind of same situations of tough family dynamics, of family dynamics that change, of homes that change, of sort of from 1 year, 1 month to the next. Family situations are really difficult. It might be changing. And I was wondering if you could just speak a little bit before we sort of ask a few questions and wrap this up. What would you say to encourage students that maybe are going through some of that family struggle? Of that where life is just really tough right now at home, or maybe multiple homes, life is really tough right now?
I would say the most important thing that I wish I would have known is to find those good friendships. You hear a lot now about finding your tribe, or the saying of having a tribe, and I think no matter what your home life is, if you have those friends that you can surround yourself with, that they're going to lift you up, they're going to motivate you, they are going to be by your side no matter what. I think having those friends, no matter where you are in your home life or which home you're at, you will always have them to get you through it. And like I said, find those friends that have the same faith as you, that you can say that you're struggling, and they can maybe help you by giving you a Bible verse, or I read this devotion and these words really spoke to me, and I think they can help you in your situation. Because it's hard when you don't feel like you have the family support. We yearn to have those relationships with our moms and our dads. But God is our ultimate dad. He's our, and he's there wanting us to connect with him. And like I said, I don't think I could have ever done that if I didn't find my youth group friends, the friends that had the same beliefs as me, because I know that's hard too. Going to high school or even in middle school and saying, I go to youth group and I listen to worship music and I praise Jesus, and some kids are taken aback by that, and it's hard. But when you have those solid group of friends or your tribe that's standing next to you and supporting you, lifting you up, praying for you, I think that's the most important thing, no matter what is going on in your home life.
It becomes almost another family.
Yes.
It becomes where you have two families to lean on when the other family's not so
you
great.
Down or,
Yeah. And you said, I love that your focus on it's not just yes, our blood family is important, but also there's this extension of family.
Mm-hmm.
How that's one thing that you learned as a senior.
Yeah.
But maybe you wish how beneficial would that have been to have a middle school or on. So is there anything else too that you would just say to encourage students that you wish that you knew in middle school and in high school, before the last half of your senior year? Is there anything that you wish you knew and that you would tell to students now that are in middle school or maybe high school?
I think I feel like people say this a lot, but it's so true. God is with you through every step of the way. He's right there in the trenches with you. Like you said, a lot of times we talk about how great our relationship is with God when things are going well. But when things are not going well, He's right there too. He's not going anywhere. So there's nothing you can do or say that's going to steer God away from you, push Him away. And I just think if I would have known that as a high schooler or a middle schooler, and if I can just express that as much as possible to our middle school and high schoolers, that God is never going to leave you, never going to abandon you, no matter what.
And you live that out
Mm-hmm.
so well as a small group leader, of being that for your group specifically, of living out this idea that God is with you.
Yes.
No matter where you are, no matter where you go, no matter what's going on, when things are really good, when things are not so good, when you're doing everything right or you're making mistakes or whatever it is, you live that out really well. So I have one more question for you.
Okay.
Is there any final encouragement, or maybe there's a verse that really influences you that you want to share, or maybe God's just recently even sort of been teaching you something? What would you sort of want to leave as a final word for our students?
Okay. So one of my favorite Bible verses right now comes out of Proverbs, and it's Proverbs 3, verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. And I just think it's really fitting right now, especially now that we're in the middle of this pandemic and there's so many unknowns. And I feel like there's a lot of times in life, middle school, high school, adulthood, we're faced with unknowns. And I just think that's when we really need to turn to God and rely on our faith that we have in Him and know that He's always going to be faithful. We don't have to understand in the moment, but once we're finally on the other side is when we get that clarity of why this happened and what God wanted us to learn from that.
Alex, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
sharing. Thanks for all that you share with us, and also all that you bring to not only your small group but to our ministry and church and your preschool classroom and all the stuff we didn't even cover
I
today.
know.
But thank you for all that you do and how well you embody this idea that God is with you no matter where you go and is always there for you, whether it be preschoolers or high school girls small group, and for everyone in between.
Yeah.
You live that out so well. So thank you so much. Thank you all for watching. Hope that you got something good out of it. We love you. We'll see you later.
Hey guys, I'm back. Please follow us on your social media, Instagram, Rev@Grace, TikTok, GraceYouth_, our Facebook page, Grace Youth, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Grace Youth Revolution. And next week, we will be continuing with online services at 7, but we are so excited to announce that we are also meeting in person at 6:30. I can't wait to see you guys there. Have a great week. Bye!